Adrian Lyons, the chair of the Inland Rail Task Force at New South Wales Farmers. Thanks for joining us on the Flow Network.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're having a rare taste, I understand, of the lockdowns in where you live at Coonamble as well.
Yes, it was always going to come. I suppose we've just got to get ready for how to handle it.
And so this Senate report that dropped before all the politicians had to scramble and leave Canberra because there was a lockdown coming in the ACT, this report dropped about Inland Rail, and it's not really complimentary about how it's handled by the federal government.
Oh, listen, it's vindicated how much work we've done, New South Wales Farmers firstly for 6 years and then joining CWA. We've finally been heard, and it's been reflected by the senators through this report that all the questions that have been unanswered for us have been answered in this report. So, it's a bit of an anticlimax, but it's been well worth the journey to prove that, one, that government should listen to people. We're not NIMBYs. We have a collective up here of 41 members, which includes Stock and Bingle, around the Narromine to Narrabri area and North Star. So I think everyone should feel really good about the fact that we've made it this far. It wasn't an independent inquiry; it's a Senate inquiry, so it actually legitimises the work we've done.
Can you just, for those not familiar in our broadcast area, about what this concept of inland rail is about? Is it something that New South Wales Farmers in principle opposes, or you're okay with it so long as it goes down a route that's a sensible one?
We've always supported policy inland rail. We just don't like the way it's been prosecuted. They're building for budget, not specification. So the corners they've cut is quite amazing. When you have a new track that they're going to build through a greenfield site, like they're dividing farms and farm businesses for no reason when there's no justification socially or economically, but there's already a corridor of a current railway line 10 kilometres away that they could use without inhibiting this farmland. And for the sake of a few minutes to meet this sub-24-hour time from Melbourne to Brisbane, they've got no justification to say why.
So the objective here was, as I understood it, was to get freight off of the roads, the Newell Highway in particular, and get it moving faster along the rail on that route you mentioned, Melbourne to Brisbane. Well,
the politics has made it so that it's too risky. So they're trying to get the fatalities off the road. I think in the report it says 15 per year, which is quite significant. But is it really going to do that? And people just they've got to move this white fridge, and that's what it's about: moving a fridge under 24 hours. And out of 20 trains per day, you're only going to have one train that needs to be under that time. But it's made that ARTC wedded to that political argument that it has to be under 24 hours. So it hasn't allowed them to move from one track to another or keep on these existing corridors. I actually feel sorry for ARTC, who have done a pretty poor job to date. But if it had been 30 hours, well, they could have encapsulated all these communities that had existing rail lines going through it, where they could enhance their communities and economic development. And that's where the government and ARTC have missed the boat.
And it does seem that they've just drawn a line on a map in a sense and just said this is the fastest way through, and not really, as you say, born an understanding of where the current corridor is and where the communities and farms are.
Well, that's right. Like they did a business case study in 2006 or 2010 and 2015. Well, it doesn't justify it now. Like things have changed since then. That's 7 or 8 years ago. And to economically justify this and for how much we're going to gain, but they haven't really printed out how much we're going to save. Now, we support this inland rail and we'll sing that to the rooftops, but it's been giving carriage to ARTC, which have done a poor job, and it's fallen on deaf ears with the government because they don't want to listen to what is right. And we've finally been made right in this Senate inquiry, which we're really, really happy about. I'm a volunteer. It just made it very hard to not be able to be heard in these corridors, and now we are. So,
yeah. And more broadly across our network and across the nation, the taxpayer cost of this project now, the report says it's going to cost north of $14 billion. The initial cost was just between $4 and $5 billion. Is there a concern that, how much have they spent so far on this project?
Well, that's you look at Senate estimates, this is always going to be a $20 to $30 billion project. Now, that it's just had feature creep the whole way through it. But even though it's extended in volume of money and volume of track, they're still building some of this area to a budget, which is very unsafe, especially with the flooding and hydrology. It is a disgrace. We've just completed an EIS with the state government, and we've objected to the submission from ARTC. It was so light on. There was no information in there to be able to critique. And it just proves it's a crash or crash through mentality. You know, their consultation process, they're ill-equipped to handle. You know, farmers are predominantly opening up the spine and the corridors here to be able to move our produce, but they've got to have answers. There's like anyone in your electorate or your listeners. Like if it's going through their house, they want to know why. And that's been the biggest question. Well, if you're going to put it here, let us know why. Make it so it is the right place to go and that the future of this nation-building project is the right one. But it's not. And Barnaby's got a big job here. He's now brought forward a meeting with us, CWA and New South Wales farmers, to discuss the impacts of this, because he made an announcement the other day that Brisbane and NIMBY, so I'll take it to Gladstone. Well, we completely welcome that announcement.
Yeah, that's the thing I was just about to ask you. This was the baby of, among others, former Nationals leader Michael McCormack. Does anything change now that the minister actually handling it is the Deputy Prime Minister and Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce since deposing McCormack? Do you suspect there might be a different approach now?
Well, he made that announcement. Brisbane's NIMBYs and we'll take it to Gladstone. Well, we welcome this because it actually is a more substantiated business case to take it to Gladstone. It actually is port to port. Going to Brisbane, it wasn't going to a port. They hadn't done the business case, and that's where the cost blowout was going to happen from Toowoomba Range down to Brisbane, but it still didn't make the port. And Brisbane's not ready for it. So we're completely open to discussions with Barnaby, but he has to be open after 6 years of us working with legitimate claims, and he jumps on the radio and just says, I'm going to take it to Gladstone. Well, how come he can get in there and just say that? Now, we want to, with this Senate report, we'll actually force his hand, and he has to come to the table and be willing to make some changes.
Well, I think in the end, the best cost benefit for the nation, and particularly for farmers and other freight movers, is going to be what's best for everyone.
Well, exactly. Like the taxpayer needs to know what's going on. And when you talk to the metropolitan people, and, you know, friends of mine or whoever we talk, they don't know about inland rail. But it is an important bit of infrastructure that was built by the brainchild of John Howard and Everett Compton, but it was always supposed to go to Gladstone, and it was for regional benefit. Well, we're the biggest state with the most to lose in New South Wales. Well, there's no benefit. It's just going to cost this state government. So we support New South Wales government, and we want more figures. We want the line to pick up wherever it can on existing corridors to communities to drought-proof themselves. Now, we're not getting much assistance in the drought area, but if we can get a cost saving for a farmer and grow these towns, which like Coonamble, for instance, is a diminishing town. Inland rail coming to it will actually economically develop it. More jobs. You've got a natural hub there of 700,000 tonne of grain, of which we were told by ARTC we weren't economically viable to go to. I know that's a lot to think about for your listeners, but you could shoot holes all through the study and the reports because there's no answers.
Yeah, well, I think the relevance, not just the overall taxpayer cost, but the relevance is also going to be for listeners that however they go about this one is how they might go about future railway projects that, you know, speed the movement of freight all through regional Australia. So thanks for your work on it, and we look forward to updates as hopefully you get a meeting with the Deputy PM.
Oh, we've got one. Thank you very much for your time.